life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Moonbeam Universe. This time we have a very special guest. We have Jimmy. He is the marketing manager for Chainlink, and we're gonna have an amazing chat about Chainlink, about how can we use Chainlink, to better do better dApps and better projects at the end because everybody uses Chainlinks, right, Jimmy?
Yes, sir. Yeah, happy to be
Yeah.
here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, sure. Guys, we're gonna have at the end a trivia. So, like the other Moonbeam Universe, we're gonna have some swags, we're gonna have some things very cool at the end for the winners of the trivia. So stay tuned. Make sure to listen to the DAC. Jimmy has some very good updates to share with us as well. And that's pretty much it. So Jimmy, first of all, again, welcome to Moonbeam Universe. We would love to hear from you. I guess you'll prepare some deck to us to present a little bit of more of things that is happening in Chainlink, right?
Yeah, you got it. So let me share my screen and
Sure.
let me know. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Excellent. Wonderful. Okay, cool. Well, that's the title slide here. Um, yeah. So first off, thanks for having me. This is like we were chatting before this, but this is the fun part of the job, right? And I'm just really excited to be here and just connect with everyone in the Moonbeam universe, right? This is pretty cool. So, as mentioned, I'm the product marketing lead for Chainlink's data feed products. And so, big part of my job is helping educate people on why we do what we do, how we do what we do, and then how they can incorporate that into their own dApps and building this thing that we like to call Web3 and that we're all really excited about. So I have a deck here. It's not too long. It's maybe 15 to 20 minutes, and kind of want to go through this in three parts, right? Like, let's talk about what is the Oracle problem, because that's really important to how Chainlink thinks about the Oracle problem is really important to how we operate and why we build the way we do, and sort of all this stuff that that stems from it. So, want to spend just a minute there. Then we'll talk about like Chainlink data feeds, how we're constructed, why we're different, why that matters, and then we'll finish up just kind of showing how you guys in the audience can get started and build things into your dApps. So we'll kick that off. And so, like I said, like the Oracle problem, I think it's worth thinking through, even if you understand what it is. I think it's worth thinking through from the Chainlink perspective as well, as it shapes just how we go about almost everything that we do. And so, we're excited about smart contracts. We're excited about Web3. I think everyone on this call really is. And I remember, my aha moment when I first understood what a smart contract was. I was like, oh my goodness, it's this global human cooperation machine, this coordination computer that like we've never seen the likes of before, and we can just do so many amazing things. And then when you look into how do we actually put this into reality, you understand that there's an essential challenge, and that's that these blockchains are these, deterministic, self-referencing systems. They don't understand what's happening outside of what's happening on their own chain, right? So you need to have some bridge to bring this data into them to make your smart contracts actually do these, world-changing things that we want to do, right? Like if you want to write an insurance policy, if it rained, then pay out my flood insurance. You need somehow to understand that it rained, right? And so how do you connect to the real world? You need an Oracle, right? So solving this is the Oracle problem. And it's pretty simple in theory, right? Like, well, this is the question I always get is, right, well, this is pretty simple, right? You just like connect to a database, right? Like connect to an API. We've solved this problem. Like my program needs data, so I just connect to an API and my program has that data and everyone's super happy about that, right? Like that's how most of the Web2 world works. But like I could promise you, like especially in DeFi, where millions of dollars can, change hands in the snap of a finger, like if you just use an API and you don't think about how you're getting this data into your system, like you're going to have a bad time, right? It's just like not bad things are going to happen. And that's because in this world of DeFi, right, like you don't reverse transactions. There's tons of value that can be transferred instantaneously. So you really need to think about the underlying infrastructure that's putting data into your dApps, right? And so this really is the genesis of how we think about things here at Chainlink. And it's like, well, in the Web2 world, if you need like say, pricing for your hotel or your airplane or your plane ticket, you go to like Expedia.com and it pings a database and it returns a value, you buy your plane ticket, and that's fine. And that's all well and good in this world because we have these systems and like you can reverse transactions and all sort of stuff. But when you rely on a central data provider, like yes, you're inheriting their data, but you're also inheriting other things like their uptime or their downtime, right? You're also inheriting their security, right? If they get hacked, you get hacked. If they get manipulated, your protocol gets manipulated. And so in this world that we're trying to build, where you don't have to have human middlemen, right? That's just not good enough. You need a system that's a little bit more, or I should say a lot more robust. And, I think just to put, this is a very extreme example, but, especially in the early days of DeFi, folks are like, hey, I think this pricing website, I'm not going to name names, but this is an actual screenshot from like one of the most popular ones in the world. They're like, hey, they're right almost all the time. So I'm just going to write an API and just whatever price they display, I'm going to use in my DApp, right? And this is an actual screenshot, right? For a couple of minutes, they were displaying Bitcoin as worth like $700 trillion. And so for all you developers out there, like imagine if someone was using your protocol and had like a short position on Bitcoin, like no way Bitcoin's going over like $60,000, right? Then it shoots up to 700 trillion, like you're vaporized. Your protocol is vaporized, all your users, that's like a terrible user experience. And this is a really extreme example, but it's illustrative of the fact that if you don't have like this redundancy and this really rock solid bedrock foundation of information, your smart contracts might be performing correctly with the wrong data and create this terrible user experience. You just can't have that, right? You just need absolute certainty that the data you're using is rock solid. And so to kind of like speed run how folks in DeFi have built things, it's like they've tried a number of ways to tackle this problem, and they all sort of like make sense logically, right? Like we just talked about single source oracles, and that's a challenge because maybe there's an outage or something, right? It's just like a single point of failure, but they're also like more prone to manipulation because only one price or whatever you're pulling needs to be manipulated to impact your protocol. There's TWAPs, like the time weighted average price, which are good in a lot of ways, but have some inherent challenges in that they're not as precise. They're going to be a time lagging output, and then they don't have full market coverage because they're only pulling from like one decentralized exchange. And then there's like the do-it-yourselfers, especially in the earlier days. People are like, well, I have a team of smart people. I got a ton of money. I'm just going to do it myself. And I can promise you don't want to do it yourself. For the same reason, I think we'll look back at this and like, if you're going to build a factory today, you're not like back in the days, they used to like generate their own electricity on site, right? Like, you just don't want to do that, right? You want to focus on what you build. And for the same reason, like, you don't try and generate your own electricity or like create your own internet company or whatever to run your business. Like it's a tough problem to solve, right? And so I can promise you, right, and this is just a selection of headlines, like if you do any of those three things that we just mentioned, like bad things are going to happen to you, right? This is just like, I just spent a couple of minutes just pulling headlines of Oracle manipulation attacks from folks who had used, TWAPs or single source or built it themselves. And like you can see, just the value destruction is massive, right? So like, don't do that. It's like, what should you do, right? And like, how do you solve this problem? How do you think about this problem in a way that gives you really robust infrastructure and peace of mind and a great user experience? And this is how Chainlink builds our data feeds. And we're going to go into each of these buckets here a little bit more. But from left to right, you can think of this as a data pipeline where we're pulling data from all the relevant exchanges all over the world. It's being aggregated by these professional data aggregators. And then that's being fed into the Chainlink node operator network. And then our node operators come to a consensus, and then they put a price on chain into the reference contracts. And these reference contracts on the right, that's what you use in your dApps, right? And I'll show you an example of this, but we have a proxy address that you can put right into your smart contract. And so this is how we've constructed our data feeds, right? Multiple layers of aggregation, multiple layers of resiliency and redundancy. And we like to call this our 3 layers of data aggregation. So as we mentioned, it's aggregated at the source level. So we're getting data from every relevant exchange across the entire market. We have these they're going to these data operators, and then we have our node operators, and then it's going to the Oracle network level. So we have 3 layers here. And really what this boils down to is like, well, if like, you know, Binance reports the wrong price for some reason, like it's okay because our Chainlink data feed is still going to give your DApp the correct price. If one of our node operators goes down, that's okay because we're still going to give you the right price. If one of these data providers goes down, same thing, we're still going to give you the right price, right? So there's like these 3 layers of resiliency and redundancy that make sure the right price is delivered every single time. So we're going to dive into each of these. Here's a screenshot. If you haven't been there already, and I have a link at the end, but we have a site called data.chain.link, and we'll link to that at the end. But it's a really cool visualization of our data feeds. So I went in and I pulled our what our ETH USD price feed looks like on Moonbeam mainnet, and you can see a couple interesting pieces here. So on the right, we have all our Oracle operators that are node operators that are part of this, you know, dedicated to this feed. So that's pretty neat. We'll talk about them a little bit more in a second. And then you can see down here, we have these trigger parameters, which are really interesting and important concept to understand, especially for you builders out there. So you can see we have trigger parameters, which means like these Chainlink price feeds are not, it's not a streaming set of data that we're just constantly sending a stream of data of the price on chain. What we're actually doing is we have this trusted answer. And then if any of these trigger parameters are triggered or surpassed, like these thresholds are met, it'll automatically refresh the price on chain. So for instance, if the price hasn't changed in 5 minutes and 38 seconds, we'll automatically pull a new price. If the node operators are starting to report prices that are above this 0.2% deviation of the trusted answer, we'll automatically refresh the price. And so that's an interesting way of how we operate, which allows us to give like really fresh data for you guys, and also in a way that, you know, minimizes gas fees and all that good stuff and clogging up the network. I mentioned the node operators, and I wanted to call this out. This was we put this out on Twitter a little ways back. I was talking to some of our node operators and folks, and like they just don't get enough love. So I wanted to highlight them here, just so we can all kind of appreciate them. But really, the backbone of the Chainlink network, they're distributed all over the world, which is really important, right? Like if something bad happened in like North America or whatever, like we still have a bunch of node operators everywhere else, right? And so that's like a really important part of this resiliency picture here. And so you can see some of these stats, just like they're huge, right? Like they've delivered billions of data points on chain. They secure billions of value. They support a whole bunch of different price feeds. It's pretty cool. And we have these kind of different classes of node operators, which is just interesting to note. I'll call out here these enterprise node operators. These are some names that you might actually know, right? Like T-Systems is T-Mobile in the US, Swisscom, LexisNexis. Like these are professional node operators for like telecommunications companies that are dedicating, some resources to securing the powering the Chainlink network, which is pretty cool. So we have this innovation called off-chain reporting, and I'll let this animation go through a couple of times here. But we mentioned previously, like with the trigger parameters, that right, like anytime you put a transaction on chain, like that costs gas, right? It uses up some of the space, the block space in the chain, and so we have this really cool innovation called off-chain reporting, where the data providers will submit their answers, and our Oracle network actually comes to a consensus off-chain. So they do all this computation off-chain and then just report it a single time to the smart contract that you reference in your contract, or in your smart contract in your DApp. And that allows you, that just saves a lot of computation on chain, a lot of gas fees. It's a pretty cool innovation. So another piece here that I think is just really interesting from like a mental model and understanding like, what happens when you're participating in the Chainlink network or using the feeds is we have this sort of like dual flywheel, this like two-sided virtuous cycle, where more users begets more APIs and more data becomes available, which creates more smart contract applications, which feeds into more users, which is a self-reinforcing cycle. And then on the other side, it also generates fees, which brings on more node operators and allows them to secure the Chainlink network even more. So there's like this dual flywheel of increased utility and security that feeds into each other. And so by building with Chainlink, you're being part of this flywheel, which I think is a really cool thing for the future of Web3. This is a fun stat, and I wanted to highlight this as a means to just show the scale that Chainlink data feeds are operating at already. And this is a metric called transaction value enabled. We unveiled it at SmartCon in September, which was really fun. And what it measures is it's a flow metric that measures the amount of value that has been supported by a Chainlink price feed or Chainlink Oracle. So if you make $1,000 Ethereum transaction using a DeFi DApp that references an Oracle Chainlink price feed for Ethereum, right? That's $1,000 worth of TVE of transaction value enabled. And so this is a cumulative stat in just from January of this year to October, which is when we refreshed the data. We've enabled over $6 trillion of transaction value across the Chainlink Oracle network. And that's just massive scale and a really cool thing to highlight. And the number one thing that I like to stress when we're talking to folks out there is just like, the security, the reliability, the battle tested nature of the price feeds, right? I think like this kind of speaks to that, right? Like we're trying to be this infrastructure that Web3 can be built on. And so I think, having over $6 trillion of value pass through us in this calendar year is pretty good testament to that. So the next piece is like maybe saying, okay, that's fine, but like, how do we get started? How do we use this if we want to? So here I have some of the feeds that are available on Moonbeam mainnet. There's a more exhaustive list on our documentation, which I linked to here, but I encourage you to go to data.chain.link. You can search by the Moonbeam mainnet network, and I'll show you all of the price feeds that we have available that you guys can start building with today. And if you click into this, you get to that fun visualization of the node operators and the trigger parameters and all that good stuff. I went through, there's a number of folks building with Chainlink on Moonbeam already. So I just went through and pulled some screenshots and just to like kind of provide a visual of how people are using Chainlink price feeds. So this is from Moonwell. If you click into their DApp, right, like they're using Chainlink price feed. So like they have this is the price for BTC at this moment in time. And if you hover over, it tells you that, hey, we're pulling this from Chainlink. And if you actually click on this link, it brings you to the proxy address and Etherscan that shows you how they're drawing the data. Similar with WePiggy, I love these guys. I did a case study with them earlier in the year, but just spent some time cruising around on their UI. And if you click into any of their assets, right, in their DApp UI, they'll show you that, hey, we're getting this is a Chainlink price feed, right? So this is where the price is coming from. You can rely on it, that sort of stuff. So if you are, builder or very technically minded, I would encourage you to go check out the Chainlink documentation. I have a link to that as well. But if you go to the documentation, you go to contract addresses here, you can select the chain that you're curious about. So, if you select Moonbeam, we have the exhaustive list of all the price feeds that we have. And really important to you is this is the proxy address. This is the contract address that is where the price is reported on chain that you can embed into your smart contracts. So this is a great place to get started if you want to mess around, and I highly encourage you also to reach out to the team as well, and they can help set you up and all that good stuff. But it's a good place to start for sure. A couple of resources. So I'm on the marketing team, but we have this dedicated developer relations team. And I believe you guys actually have a talk with one of my colleagues on the DevRel team coming up. And so he'll go more into this, but we have this really amazing library of tutorials to get started. So definitely check it out. This is just kind of a sample of what we have, but they just spend a ton of time making these awesome videos about how to get started in these tutorials. So would absolutely recommend checking that out. And as promised, had a couple links, and we can certainly share these after in the chat or however you guys think is best. But would encourage you to check out the docs page, that data.chain.link page. Our Discord is a great place if you have questions or want to get connected with the team or start, understanding how to build. People answer your questions in there. And then we have a request to feed, on our websites, talk to an expert. But if you're like, hey, really want this feed and I want it in my contract, just fill out this form and we'll get in touch and all that good stuff to get started there. So that is what I have for you guys today. Hopefully a good little primer on Chainlink data feeds, why we do what we do, how we built it, and how you guys can get started. So I'll leave it with that. Thanks so much.
This was amazing. Thank you so much, Jimmy, because it's very enlightening when we see a project like as big as Chainlink, right? And we so many years working, in the crypto industry in helping, right, with this infrastructure to boost with reliability, our ecosystem. So it's always great, to have a better understanding. I guess we have a lot of builders in here, but we also have a lot of people that just want to learn about how
Mhm.
these Oracle feed works. So this was amazing. I wrote down some highlights in here that I like to say it again. You mentioned about the bridge, right, between the real world data and blockchain. I guess when we look at of all those hacks that happened lately, all those things, so many um, things that could be mitigated, right, if we were using like protocols, reliable protocols like Chainlink, like what are you guys doing, um and not simply connecting to an API. This stuck with me because it's so true, isn't it? It's like we are building this blockchain, this crypto world, and we're gonna rely on API. Like
Yeah, this is the
it's
number
definitely
one
not
question I
making
get it.
sense.
If I
So
go to like a
I think
meetup or
this
like
is
some event, they're like, well, why don't I just use an API? You're like, well, okay, yeah. There's a lot here. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Glad that resonated.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the values resonates a lot with Moonbeam values, right? Which is about trustless, right? Which is about you are be able to get a data and you're not trusting an entity, you're not trusting a person. There's so many layers of security redundancy that makes the data that you are receiving a trustless data, right? Of course, when we say trustless, it's because there's a whole procedure to get to this data that it does not depend on one or two people. So this is amazingly good. You mentioned, so I have a couple of questions now, Jimmy, if that's okay for you. You mentioned about the three layers of data curation, right? That's how we get the reliability, and that does not affect the performance, right? The data is actually very, very fast to get received. How does that
Mhm.
work? Is that the 5 minutes you mentioned, and or 0.2%?
Yeah. So right, like another question that will always gets brought up, especially when I was at like the SmartCon booth, is like, well, like I just want to bring my data on chain and like and build smart contracts. You're like, okay, well, what is the blockchain uniquely enabling for your data set, right? Like we already have AWS, right? Like you could, if you want something that's like lightning fast and super cheap, like you can do that and build, Web2 dApps. So like, what's the blockchain uniquely enabling? And it's this idea of like having parties who can never exchange value before interact in a way without, like
Yep.
without that could never do it before, right? So there's obviously trade-offs, right? Like I said, the data is not streaming, right? It's not coming in instantly, instantly, and because anytime you introduce a blockchain, there's going to be latency because there has to be consensus that happens first, and then there's going to be added cost, which is the gas fees that happen when you write on chain. So that's just kind of like fundamental, design,
Yeah.
design it like whatever. But to your point, so certain feeds and use cases like require, and certain blockchains are built for different speeds, right? So like the Ethereum feeds don't update as fast as like some of the other feeds, like like these other L1s or whatever that are built to be faster, right? So like those
Right.
can update faster and faster. You'll also see, and I don't want to go into this too much, but we did produce a blog post on a low latency Oracle solution that we're devising as well, which will like for these like use cases where you need instantaneous like derivatives or something, we're producing a product for that as well. So stay tuned there. That'll be really exciting.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, and I mean, the reason I ask is because all those very reliable projects that you showed a print screen of a screenshot of one of a couple of projects here, Moonbeam, which we really like about it. And they use as a reliable data, and of course there's all the performance, everything. It comes with it with the package, and the way it is, is the go-to solution, Chainlink. So that's really really good too. Now I see there was a lot of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to mention like the thing that folks resonate, right? Like, so is what matters to, so our users are dApps, right? And like they're not always the DeFi end users. It's the builders and the people building these protocols. And so the way that resonates and that we talk to is like we enable a great user experience because your user never has to think about it, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
this is like the classic like technology principle, like the best technology operates in the background, right? So that's what we're aiming to be, right? And so
Right.
that's what resonates. And we like to think we enable a great user experience for your users.
Right. And it's very good to see all the documentation about, the training, how to get started. I will definitely check that out because, like most of the dApps nowadays require some kind of Oracle-based information data that has to be fed, right? At least not the simplest one, like the ones that is more robust and more professional. They always require some kind of Oracle. So that's very good to see as well. One question that I have is that I see there's a lot of DeFi focus, and absolutely right because DeFi is probably like like our industry nowadays is majorly DeFi,
Mhm.
right? So I think that's pretty much in line. But we also mentioned about the raining days and all those stuff. So how do we get those data? Because we're getting from exchanges to get the price. How do you guys get the data for like raining days in some place?
Yeah, yeah. So great. So like I think you're right. DeFi is where we grew up. It's where Web3 is growing up. And like now we're seeing like NFTs as well and all that sort of stuff, right? So like if we want to know, did it rain in Zambia or whatever, like CoinGecko is not going to tell us that, right? Or like that's not going to be traded on Binance. So we actually have a whole arm of folks, right? So it's about finding different data providers and building feeds that go into that, right? So you can go on our website, but we got like partnerships with like Google and AccuWeather and like satellite data providers and stuff. So it's like taking this data feed infrastructure, like the node operators, and plugging it into these real world data providers, right? And that's just
Right.
like the demand for that's just not as far along as DeFi. So it's just not as prominent and built out, but it's there. We're working on it. But yeah, it's like we find these other data providers and plug in our node
Okay.
infrastructure to them.
And they follow the three layers of data aggregation as well. They have the nodes that we have to validate those data and so on,
Mhm.
right? Okay, so that's cool. Because when this is another thing too. I mean, there's so many things that we will explore in the near future, right? With much more than five. You mentioned about the rainy days, but I assume that several dApps and projects they will work on those solutions of Oracle base of real world data, right? To get fed into their protocol. So this is gonna be very very interesting to see how it's gonna develop, right?
Mhm.
Um, and this is one example that I was giving my friend, just a side note. They were talking about like, okay, how explain to me blockchain because I don't understand. And of course, I had to use Chainlink to link it with something for the real world, right? But it's about having a winery in California, and you want to hedge yourself against some raining days or bad season or whatever. You maybe in the near future you're going to be able to write a smart contract where you can create a hedge, right? You can hedge yourself against like a bad season. And bad season could be whatever you define, number of raining days or whatever, and we're going to have this data being very reliable online that you're going to be able to make like a long-term decisions. And that's
Mhm.
pretty much it, right? That's where Chainlink basically comes in as well in the other real world applications, right?
Yep. Yeah. If you need data for your smart contracts, like we want to provide that data and we want to provide it in a way where you don't need to think about it, right? It's just like, yeah, this is the right answer.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Any final thoughts? Maybe one thing that I would like to hear from you, it's about the beginning of Chainlink. maybe you can tell us like when Chainlink started and maybe how we became like this, what it is today. This huge
Yeah.
project.
Right. So I'll preface this by saying I joined Chainlink in January of this year. So I've been here
Okay,
almost a year, right? So I was not around at the genesis, but I'm really
right.
happy to be part of the project. But yeah, we grew up, in an Ethereum centric world, right? 2017, I think, was mainnet launch, and ICO. Ethereum, and like we got our start with DeFi because that's just where the industry started, right? And so we've grown after kind of get product market fit, and all these other blockchains start popping up. You start growing, you start doing things beyond DeFi, you start going to all these other projects, and then all of a sudden, or all these other blockchains, and now you have a
Yes.
large flywheel, and then people like me.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Along. But it's a fun question because you think about where we started, and then you think about where you want to go, and the curve is the addressable opportunity is so large. You just always feel like you're looking up at the curve.
Absolutely. And I think when we think about where we want to go, right? The answer to this question is changing every year, right? Because we're learning with new things. Like you mentioned about 2017, we had Ethereum, and we felt like we want to be, like one of the best in Ethereum, whatever. But that's the thing we had in mind. But then other chains come up, like we have nowadays. Chainlink provides to so many different blockchains, and this is amazing because it became like this whole chain solutions for several chains in the same time. So I guess who knows what the future holds, right, for the next few years. Very hard
Yeah,
to
so
you know
true. Who knows what the next week holds? Honestly, this industry is
yeah,
crazy.
exactly, such a crazy year, I tell you. Yeah, amazing. And you mentioned about how I know this because I spoke with a couple of devs and they were working on some dapps and they used Chainlink, right? And they mentioned to me that it was really easy to use Chainlink in their dApps, right, in their smart contracts. And
Mhm.
I assume that it really is, right? Is basically just get those reference of those smart contract address, and you are able to get the data from it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the whole goal is like we want our technology to be accessible and easy and easy to deploy and reduce friction and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think at the basics, you can copy and paste a contract address, you can build it in. I will say like that's all well and good to test and all that stuff, but I would really encourage any builders out there to like reach out to the team and tap into their expertise about like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. How would you recommend? Because we've just learned so many things, and my guess is our guidance on that journey would probably be really helpful. Maybe short circuit a few learnings for you. But yeah, so that is the goal though.
That's amazing. That's amazing. One final thought. And you mentioned Jimmy, and I think it's important to highlight. We talked about this a couple of times, but when we talk about reliability, right, we're talking about those dApps, those projects. There are serious teams involved, to create very serious dApps, and that will provide several very important solutions to the world, and they have to have reliable data. Being able to use Chainlink in this way, like you said, we don't have to verticalize. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We don't
Right.
have to create our own energy or anything like that. There are projects that already is providing us the infrastructure level, right, of solutions that we need to become what we crypto enthusiasts
Mhm.
envision, for the near future. So this is amazing. I'm a huge fan personally of Chainlink, for several years now, to be honest. So I love you guys. It's amazing. Jimmy, thank you so much. You have any final thoughts, any final words to our community?
I'll just say again, I'm really happy to be here, and it is true. Like this is the fun part of my job is talking to communities and builders and like the people who I just hope like if we can inspire people to build something awesome, like that's just a really good way to spend your time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you all can build. Like we don't know what the future is going to look like, and a big part of what shapes that is going to be people like everyone here in the audience building cool stuff. So I'll leave with that. Just super happy to be here, excited to see where people are going, and just can't wait to see what people build.
Exactly. Me too. Me too. And I'll be just watching and probably surfing in those dApps and learning as we go. But again, thank you so much, Jimmy. Thank you so much. It was great to have you here. Now we're gonna have our trivia. Jimena's gonna help us out with the trivia, and we'll go from there. But
All
again,
right, thanks
Jimmy,
so
thank
much.
you
I'll
so
leave
much.
you in the capable hands of the Moonbeam folks. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you,
We'll
Jimmy.
do. Thanks.
Okie dokes. I left the link to the trivia game in the chat, and I also everyone can see a green button in the in above our pictures. So just join the trivia. I'm gonna share my screen, and we can start in a bit. Okay, let's see. Just
Jimena, I think you're on mute. You are? Okay. Yeah, I don't have your audio, Jimena. Well, Jimena is trying to is gonna solve this for a second, or I can go with you, Jimena, in this one. So if you share your screen, I can go ahead and help you out, and that gives some time to everybody to join in. So you go to trivia. There's a button here down the screen to join the trivia game. Jimena also shared the link if you want to join. So you go over there, click on the link, making sure you have the game pin, which is this one, 9410319. Put your email address, put your nickname, and go forward. Alrighty. Whenever, Jimena, it's with you. Whenever you want to start. Okay, let's go, guys. Which of the following is not a part of the Chainlink network's virtual cycle? Come on, guys. There is also time variable in this one, so you have to be precise over there and click as fast as possible because that always counts as well. Okay, we already have two right answers in here. Lester and Tony, you guys are leading. How many layers of data aggregation are present in Chainlink price feed? One, two, zero, or three? I remember Jimmy and I we discussed about this one too a couple of times. Yeah, three layers, and that's what make them really, really good and reliable, right? That's what they mentioned. Third question. This one you can select more than one. So how much transaction value have Chainlink price feeds enabled in dollars? Oh man, you can select more than one. Remember, right? Yeah, it was more than $6 trillion. This is crazy, right? $6 trillion. I wish I had that in my bank account. What tech allows node operators to run compute off chain and then submit a single verified transaction on chain? He also mentioned about this one as well. This was a very interesting one. Yeah, we didn't talk much about this one. I saw in the presentation this was a very good one, and I'm very, very interested to learn more about this one. Yeah, off-chain reporting protocol, right? It's a way to get more um, data in a better performance and in an off-chain way, but sometimes it's a solution that people are looking for. So that's good too. Yeah, all right. Okay, last question. The name of the trigger parameter that automatically refreshes the Oracle price to prevent data from becoming stale is heartbeat, refresh rate, price poll protocol, or clock manager. He also mentioned about this one too. This was when he was explaining the three layers, and there was um, some two variables that can update um, the price, right? Which was the heartbeat, and there was another one too regarding to the the price, the change variation of 0.2%. Yeah, this was very cool for sure. So third place, Moons, congratulations. Second place, Leo. In first place, I think I know who it is. Lester. All right, guys. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, Tony and Satoshi. Satoshi, unfortunately, you have to stick with Bitcoin. Yeah. So, guys, the team from Moonbeam will from Chainlink will get in touch, right, Jimena? They will get in touch with you through your email that you put in. If you have any questions, we're gonna be here to help. Few final words. Jimena shared the links here to the docs for Chainlink, data.chain.link docs dot chain link as well in their Discord, which they will be able to help you out a lot with you building experience or just want to learn about Chainlink a little bit more. So I appreciate your time and for being here today, and see you guys in the next Moonbeam Universe.